It's a Hornets point guard theme show today. Baron Davis spoke in a summer league game about LaMelo Ball. Kemba Walker will be helping coach LaMelo. So we'll just go through the nostalgia, talk about all the Hornets point guards of the past and the present, the future too. I don't know. It's a point guard theme show today on Locked On Hornets. Plus, we'll mention this.
Serendipitedness, if that's a word. Serendipity.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pod, and that includes YouTube. There's the ghost of Doug Branson. Ooh. Not even the real Doug Branson. Everyhornetsboxscore.com. That's a very real website. It's not a ghost website. It is real. Go visit it. Subscribe. Also find out his subtext information. It'd be cool to text a ghost. Subtext information right there, everyhornetsboxscore.com. And I'm Walker Mehl. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. So, yeah, this is right. Are you a ghost, or did you create some AI version for this Doug Branson to host a pod with me until real Doug Branson comes back from vacation?
That's right. Either way, I'm not really here. I'm actually an artificial intelligence, although some that watch the show and comment on YouTube have already called my intelligence artificial. I'm not really here. I'm sipping Mai Tais on a beach somewhere.
Oh, sweet.
So any opinions that I express on this show, just understand that I don't stand by them at all, unless they're correct. And in that case, then I'll take credit for them.
Are you able to feel? Do you have emotions?
Well, yeah, I think both the artificial intelligence and the real Doug Branson have been stripped of feelings by this team and the injuries and the despair and the sickness. I've not been stripped of hope, but I have been desensitized a little bit by the drama that is the Charlotte Hornets. But I still have my hope.
That means your sicko mode is working. That chip is not malfunctioning. It is alive, and it is well. Let's go with a point guard theme show today. It just felt like I kept hearing from Hornets point guards all over the place. We had the LaMelo opinions from national NBA pundits. We got to see the in-summer league game interview with Baron Davis just last week. So that was cool, where he talked about his relationship with Melo. We heard a Muggsy Bogues reference on the Zach Lowe podcast, so we'll get to all of it. But it does feel like we're reading a lot about Melo right now. Summer, people are giving you the team breakdowns right after the draft, right after free agency. They look at the Hornets, and there's some intrigue. They bring back Miles Bridges. What's going to happen there? Brandon Miller comes in, sets the league on fire in the Eastern Conference. If it wasn't for Wemby and Chet, these two unicorns out in the West Coast, he would get a lot more love as the rookie, and he was the best rookie in the Eastern Conference this past season. Then you get to LaMelo. People are like, oh, wait, man, the dude was amazing his rookie season. He gets an all-star bid his second season, and we just don't see him a whole lot on the court anymore. But my God, if he's healthy, he is so much fun, and he is a huge difference for that basketball team in terms of whether they even really can get to the play-in, Doug, and just how far they can ascend, because they can't reach their ceiling anywhere close to it, anything close to it, without LaMelo playing like at least half the games and even more than that. You're looking at like 60 or something. What's the LaMelo hope meter? Is your LaMelo hope chip still functioning properly?
Yes, it's functional. Well, I don't know if it's functioning properly. It is functioning. I do have hope that LaMelo can still be an all-star in this league. I will say that my take is I don't think I have hope that he can be an all-NBA player anymore. That was my hope. I think that slipped away a little bit, but I think he can regain all-star status for this team. But it's all obviously dependent on health. The all-NBA thing is dependent on a lot of other things. It's dependent on discipline. It's dependent on how he functions within the team, if he's like the primary scoring option or if he's a secondary scoring option, because all NBA, you gotta score points. That's just kind of the name of the game. And so, if that oxygen is being sucked up by Brandon Miller, maybe Miles Bridges, and there's some sharing going on there, I don't know how necessarily that works. And I remember a tandem of Hornets that made All-NBA together once upon a time, and Glenn Rice and Anthony Mason, and they did so because those Hornets teams rode those guys to like 40-plus minutes a night.
Most in the league.
Right. Can you do that with LaMelo? Is it morally justifiable to do it with a guy who's had like 7 ankle injuries to play that guy 40 minutes? I don't think so. So, so my All-NBA question, my hope there is gone. But for him to get to an All-Star level, I think is absolutely doable. And to be an impact player on this team is doable. To be like the guy, I don't know. I don't know about that anymore.
Okay, yeah. Well, how much is that because of the presence of Brandon Miller?
A lot, because he would be forced into that role otherwise, right? I think the best, we're gonna, in a couple of years, if LaMelo does regain All-Star status and the Hornets are rolling, one of the things you and I are going to be talking about is the best thing that ever happened to LaMelo Ball was that the Hornets fell into the number 2 spot and were able to take Brandon Miller, because Brandon Miller is like the prototype leader of a team. Before that time, you had Terry going, yeah, okay, I'm going to give the keys. Here are the keys. Yeah, I'm going to give you the keys. Here are the keys. And the keys were never taken. They were being given a lot, but they weren't necessarily it just didn't seem like LaMelo was super comfortable. Some guys, I mean, we heard Scoot Henderson talk about this a lot pre-draft, wanted to come in and lead a team immediately. Anthony Edwards obviously has no problem saying that he is the leader of a team, that he's the leader of the NBA, that he's the leader of the world basketball universe.
Of Team USA, he's the guy, right?
Yeah. So he has no problem. So there's guys that are just built like that have no problem. LaMelo has never come off to me as that kind of guy. In fact, I think LaMelo has other interests outside of the NBA. There's this difficult thing where people have trouble computing the idea that somebody could be so good at a thing and not be totally 100% obsessed with that thing. They have other interests. I think LaMelo does. He can work really hard at being a great basketball player, because being a great basketball player can give him access to certain other things that he wants to do, whether it's fashion, whether it's shoes, whatever, can give him access to those kinds of universes where if he wasn't great at basketball, or if he was out of the league, maybe he doesn't have that same access. But he can work hard at being a great NBA player and also not be totally 100% obsessed with being the number 1 greatest all-time player. I just don't think that's where his head is.
Yeah, you said a lot. You cannot be, whatever you say cannot be held against you, because this is Doug Bot-son. This is not Doug Branson. He's vacationing right now. This is AI. He's not real. That man is not real. And I'm pointing to Doug.
I have a lot of thoughts on LaMelo. Whether I'm an AI or not, I have a lot of thoughts on LaMelo.
So you said a lot. My hope meter for LaMelo, I talked about it on Wes and Walker last week too. I actually still have a lot. I think the fact that you saw this guy, score 25 plus regularly before he got hurt last year, the fact that you see the offense change so much with him on the floor, he is such a force with pace, with creating opportunities for others. He can score if he does get the efficiency in the paint. That's the only thing scoring wise that's really holding him back. There are some different nuances I'm sure we could cook up, but the advanced metrics with him helping the Hornets offensively are through the roof. I just want him to be healthy and then see him and Brandon alongside each other, because I think it would be a devastating offensive backcourt. It would just be really hard to defend. And I do trust that LaMelo cares a lot about playing and being that guy. We can go about the number change. He doesn't even feel right in number 2. He's got to be number 1. I do think there is that care with him. I think there is that care about being on the court a lot. It's the watching. It's the basketball. It's the basketball pop culture. I don't know if he cares about it, which is totally fine. It is weird for us to kind of grasp. He doesn't say LeBron is somebody I really looked up to. It's me. I looked up myself. I wanted to play ball. I'm the guy. It's you know what? I kind of like that too. It's not Anthony Edwards, but I do like LeBron. Oh yeah, he's great. No ill will. I'm me, dude. I'm number 1 as well. I'm rare. And I look up to myself and I care about playing basketball. And I do think all of that also leads to, as long as he's healthy, an all-NBA caliber. I actually do think that there's some all-NBA caliber stuff here still with LaMelo.
Yeah, I think he's a tough guy to understand, and I think he will continue to get criticism even if he plays up to an all-star level. I think he's going to get criticism that's probably going to be unfair because he's just a tough dude to understand, and people are going to think he's like not taking it seriously when he is taking it seriously. I think that some of that will hold back his All-NBA potential, but you're right. Like his ability to score. And his ability to impact a game from a playmaking level, he used to be like, when he first popped into the league, he would steal rebounds all over the place. And he was a triple-double threat because he could just grab like 6 rebounds in the first quarter. He didn't do as much of that last season before he got hurt, but he still got that in it. He's got all of those aspects to his game. So he could I think he could easily tabulate what he needs to tabulate to get to an all-star level. I just think my All-NBA hope, but the Hornets don't need him to be all NBA level to be successful anymore because they do have Brandon Miller, who is, I think, more on that traditional trajectory now to get there. So it's all exciting if, and you heard, I think Barron mentioned this, I know for a fact Kemba mentioned this in his interview, everybody's mentioning this, if he stays healthy.
That's how, yeah.
And the subtext there, I think, the subtext is, joinsubtext.com/Lockdown Hornets. The subtext there is not if he stays healthy, it's if, in parentheses, he does what's necessary to stay healthy.
All right, you mentioned a couple of them. Coming up next on the Lockdown Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Let's go down the list of Hornets greats at the point guard position because Baron Davis had some comments on LaMelo, and Kemba Walker will be coaching him this upcoming season. Let's get to some Muggsy Bogues stuff, too. Just good old-fashioned nostalgia segment coming up next. Locked on Hornets. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time? Nice job, Bot. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You have last-minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, all sorts of deals, all-in pricing, seat views, lowest price guarantee, and Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. Locked on NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Doug, you mentioned Baron Davis. Yeah, here's a quote. It's Hornets Reddit picked it up and put it on Twitter, and it was a part of the interview that he had in game. The last one, I believe it was the Celtics loss they had last week. Baron said this about LaMelo. I'm a fan of the game, where the league at, their personality, watching LaMelo grow up, his journey, me going to Charlotte, him being in Charlotte. We just got a great relationship. It's always just saying what's up, checking in, letting them know I'm a fan of all the hard work they're putting in, because I don't think a lot of the guys in our generation give these younger guys credit for their journey, their fight, their grind, and then just all ultimately for their game. It's just a level of appreciation and love I want to show. First and foremost, Baron Davis is all sorts of vibes. He's always been all the vibes, just impeccable, and we love him for it. And it feels like he's just regurgitating all the vibes towards LaMelo and sharing all the love that he has for him, has the California connection. I love all of it, and I love to see these two important players in franchise history, one, back in the most successful iteration, the head guy, the quarterback, quote-unquote, of the team that actually gets the furthest in the postseason that we've ever seen in a Charlotte uniform, and LaMelo, who we're hoping could take him even further.
Well, and they're very similar in that they're two dudes that are eccentric and have varied interests that go far beyond basketball. So I think they share a lot in common. You mentioned the Cali connection as well. And, you know, Baron had a lot of growing up to do and didn't even do it all in Charlotte. Like, he had to deal with some early frustrations about being benched and had to overcome those. But even if you look at his transition from Charlotte to New Orleans, I mean, him and Byron Scott had a lot of run-ins as he was still sort of, I don't think he really grew up until he got to like Golden State. You know what I'm saying? It took him several stops. Now, we haven't seen a ton of those kinds of situations with LaMelo where he's like, clashing with a coach or something like that. But look, there's a new sheriff in town, Charles Lee. Charles Lee seems very adamant about what he expects, what he wants, what the accountability is going to be. And I think not just LaMelo, but everybody has to be on alert for like, okay, we gotta get serious now.
Yeah, and with Barron, I didn't realize that they had that relationship. I don't know if anybody else had known that before, but that's pretty cool to see that these guys are in contact. And there was the Barron celebration it was last year that they had the Baron Davis celebration. He was honored. I don't know how much was, just continued, how much was spawned from the Hornets actually honoring Barron like that. But I'm glad that he is within the consciousness of Hornets fans still. Like, we get to hear him in game. That's really cool. And we'll see what happens with LaMelo, but we get the stamp of approval from Barron, which is pretty cool. Here we are talking about mentality for some of these PGs, right? You mentioned there might be a similarity between LaMelo and Barron. It feels like Muggsy is the opposite. So you have Barron and LaMelo coming from Cali. It's still very competitive. They care. I don't even mean to say that. But, like, Muggsy is from Baltimore. Like, he's from Dunbar.
Baltimore.
Very different. And Muggsy, going into the NBA at 5'3", the reason we bring this up is because you might listen to the Low Post podcast with Zach Lowe, probably the most popular basketball podcaster out there.
Ever heard of it?
Maybe. that did sound like that. So they were talking about the Hornets a lot last week. One of the things we didn't mention was, Zach talking about how if he could write about anything in the world, there would be, a couple of serious topics. And then one thing he would love to write like 10,000 words on was about how in the world and how insane it was that Muggsy at 5'3", 136 pounds, was legitimately a good NBA player. And so it was just, I was talking to you about this last week, Doug. Like, it's really cool for national smart NBA writers to think about Muggsy every now and then. And we got to see this happen in real time with Zach listening to the pod. We got to see him think back to Muggsy and think, oh my God, how can this happen? Where us as Hornets fans, we get it. We know he's 5'3". We know that's crazy. But clearly, because it's a little bit closer to home for us than it is for people that aren't Hornets fans, it is cool to see the realization wash over them. Wait, 5'3" is short for a normal human. Like 6 foot is short for a basketball player.
Right.
5'3" is really short for human life.
It's
insane. What he said. And then, so that just got us going down Basketball Reference and just truly trying to immerse yourself in how crazy it is that Muggsy at 5'3", 136 pounds was such a good ball player. And I know you had some thoughts as to just how the stars all have to align in order for all of that to happen.
No, I think so many people are familiar with the experience, whether it's like meeting a basketball player or a football player or a professional wrestler, and when you as a normal-sized individual walk up to that person and you do the sort of head moves up, yep, there they are. And that's the normal. And so, yes, it was shocking then. It would be shocking now if you met Muggsy to go down, 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 down. Oh, there he is. Like, it is incredible that player made such an impact. But Muggsy, what's interesting about him is the serendipitedness, if that's a word, serendipity that is involved with
malfunctioning.
Muggsy finding his way to the Charlotte Hornets through the expansion draft. And what Muggsy, although he was with the organization during some super tough times, but then the organization finally got serious about winning basketball, and Alan Bristow takes over in 91, I believe, and takes them from a team that was like near bottom of the league in offense. And obviously they drafted players. They drafted LJ. They drafted Zoe. That's obviously going to help your offense. But they go from like bottom of the league offense to top of the league offense and top of the league in pace. And I think that played so much to Muggsy's strengths as a ball handler, as somebody that could push the pace in a time where that wasn't necessarily like a big thing. Like, a lot of people weren't pushing the pace like that. I think they were second in the league one year, fourth in the league the next.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, I think it was a perfect situation for Muggsy, a perfect thing for the Hornets to have, this like secret weapon that people constantly underestimated, and in a city that felt aggrieved, that felt underestimated. Like, it was just culturally, and both from like a strategic NBA level and a cultural NBA level, was just such a perfect thing that I don't think could be replicated. I was thinking about Isaiah Thomas. People, I think, now that don't remember Muggsy, they think tiny point guard. They maybe think of Chris Paul, but they probably think of IT, who's like super tiny and won 2 All-Stars.
Celtics IT, just to be clear. Isaiah Thomas, Celtics IT.
Sorry, not Pistons IT. Yeah, you have to be really older to think of him. But like Celtics IT, 5'9". He's 5'9". That's a half a foot on Muggsy. It's crazy.
So I was trying desperately to find if anybody measured Muggsy Bogues' wingspan, if that was even a thing. And the best I could get, I think it was 5'5" is the best I could come up with. Yeah, it's like this NBA 2K23 rating. So who knows if they just made that up out of thin air, that, okay, we'll just slap a 5'5" on the wingspan and call it a day.
Like, how tall was Nate Robinson? Well, I'm going to look up Nate.
He
that
was 5'8", dunk contest 5'7", something like that, and then Earl Boykins was 5'5".
Yeah,
like,
no, 5. They got him listed as 5'9". They got Nate 5'9". Spud Webb, I know he was short too, but that was during his era. But it's just like crazy. 5'3" is nuts.
No, you can't. It's really hard to find dudes now. Just walking on the street, Doug, if you were to see a 5'3" man, it would be noticeable. You would say, oh wow, that guy is really short, and then walk right by him, and that would be the shortest dude you saw that day. And that guy was legitimately a very good NBA basketball player. Like, defensively, if you put it on the floor, you were scared to death that he was just going to get under your hip and take it away. Go see pictures of Muggsy just being all muscle. Like, he was an American Staffordshire Terrier. Go look it up on Google for all you dog lovers. He was a little staffy American bully out there, just running around like a muscle hamster. I would read that. I would read Zach Lowe doing a 10,000 word deep dive on how it was to play against Muggsy, what it was like to be his teammate, and how in the world that guy became one of the better known point guards in the 90s and going into the 2000s until he decided to hang him up.
Okay, Spud Webb was 5'6". And I wonder, so Spud Webb was taken in the 4th round, the 87th pick in the 1985 draft. Muggsy was undrafted, right?
No. He was drafted. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he was drafted. He was drafted like kind of high as well, if I'm not mistaken. 12th pick.
Okay, excuse me. So, but the Spud Webb point, because my question would be, here's a sports radio question: Could a Muggsy Bogues or a Spud Webb happen again in today's NBA? And I would say it would be difficult because there are so many more taller athletic freaks at nearly every position that I think it would be tougher for that guy to exist. Everybody's playing fast. So and also there are less draft positions, so that guy would have to fight their way up through. I mean, we've been talking about Summer League a lot, and Xavier Simpson and Matt Morgan. What's the first thing we go to? These guys are undersized. They have a difficult time, even though they showed some great skill sets. They're going to have a difficult time making a roster. It's just like Muggsy played in a perfect era that was slower, less athletic, that played towards his skill set, and in an era where I think there was expansion happening, so there were opportunities for him. They're talking about expansion now. They've got the TV deal done, but we haven't gone through expansion in a long time. So, there's just so many unique situations around Muggsy, and that's why it's a great story. It's a great story because it is so unique.
Well, yeah, and just even with the era, right? Like, it wasn't such a shooting-based league. The paint was so packed. Muggsy still was able to shoot like 47, got to 49% sometimes. He had the one outlier shooting season, which is fun to look at. If you go look at his reference page, he has the 1 year where he never shot even a 3 a game. And then he gets to over 2 threes a game and shoots 42%, and then just goes right back down to not shooting them anymore as he gets a little bit later in his career. Just such a fun player to look up. And I'm glad he's an ambassador. Like, it's Doug, I would say it's Del Curry and Muggsy are the 2 biggest ambassadors of the franchise. think that would be it. So that's why I have him rated highly on the top 35 Hornets list of all time, and they will continue to be high on the top 40 list. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Somebody who is the highest on those lists, Kemba Walker. We'll talk about him. That is Coach Kemba Walker now. Fun to have him on the coaching staff. We'll talk about him in just a moment here on LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the NBA playoffs are over, we have the WNBA on a break. We get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want, and all I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Doug, I believe a listener wrote to you when we were talking a lot about Summer League starting up, about Miles Bridges getting signed. Charles Lee was announced the head coach, and what's his coaching staff going to be like? What are they going to do with the draft? Tajon Salon, 6? What? We didn't even talk about him. There was so much going on. We didn't really put enough time towards talking about Coach Kemba. We talked about the possibility. We actually discussed him being at Charles Lee's introductory presser, and we're like, okay, like I could see this happening, but we never really discussed him actually becoming a head coach. We did talk about his retirement too, but then it was the next day that he was announced a part of Lee's coaching staff. Obviously loves it. I don't know of anybody that disagrees with it or has any problem with it. Kemba, an all-time good guy. Everybody that came in contact with him absolutely loved him. So it can only mean good things to bring him aboard and welcome him back to Charlotte.
Yeah, he famously loved the city of Charlotte, like living here. It fits him. It fits his whole kind of low-key deal. And so I imagine that even after moving on to Boston and then to New York and then overseas, that he maintained some connections here. I think obviously Steve Clifford still being a part of this organization was beneficial to that whole process happening. And this was an easy win for the franchise from a PR perspective, and good for Kemba to get this opportunity. So he's a player enhancement coach. You know, I think probably a similar role to what Marvin Williams was playing last season under Clifford. You know, he can work with point guards. I honestly, I see him less working with LaMelo and more working with a guy like NSJ, where I think he can help him continue to make an impact. And you look at Kemba, a guy who was undersized himself, but was able to make an impact defensively and improve defensively over the course of his career until his knees unfortunately gave out on him. But he was able to be a plus defender on that 15-16 team, despite that not being really in his profile. So I think he can do a lot to help Nick Smith Jr. for sure.
Yeah, and I think just if we were to really dig deep into how else he can help the team, this is a guy that is example number one when you go to who was developed, who was coached really hard in order to get to this all-NBA level, which is eventually, you know, in part why he wasn't going to be retained by the organization anymore. But we have, speaking of Zach Lowe, we have that Lowe piece during the All-NBA season. It was early on when Kemba was just in fuego. He was a topic on Around the Horn. He had just gone for 60 points against Philly, and that got upset by a Jimmy Butler 3. But Kemba was balling. Like the Around the Horn topic was, could a player for a non-playoff team actually win MVP? Like we were, that was our claim to fame. But in the write-up that Lowe had, it was about the meeting that he had with Steve Clifford, working on his shot, making sure that he, like, hey, I don't know if I can continue to change the form the way you want me to. It's just the shot's not falling. I'm going to go back to my old way. And then Steve said, okay, and you'll never take that next step to be a great point guard in this league. You'll always just be an average to decent one. That's it. And Kemba stuck with it. And sure enough, you know, we got to reap the benefits of that. And he did too. The fact that Kemba is an example of hard coaching having gone right, and he can continue to point to that and be a player to help give this message to other players that might be in a little bit of a rut or questioning the coaching style and whatever it is that Charles Lee and Josh Longstaff and everybody's trying to sell them. The fact that you have Kemba as a mediator or a conduit or that guy that can go to those players because of what they've experienced, not only can this just be a feel-good story, Doug, which, yeah, there's that. There are legitimate reasons as to why he is perfect to be on this coaching staff because of he went through, and that's why I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you know my take on sort of this organization constantly living in the nostalgia of the past, and most of that has had to do with living in the Muggsy past. Not necessarily, they haven't really lived in the 2015-16 past, because to live in that past is to admit that it has been almost a decade since you've been to the playoffs, right. So you can't even really acknowledge what happened there. So I've had that criticism, but that's not what this is. This is about a guy who, as you said, can share the stories. It's very opposite of Michael Jordan, right? The former owner of the Charlotte Hornets, who Michael, like a lot of players who were just great, couldn't really explain why he was great, I don't think could relate to your sort of mid-level player and give him advice on how to take his game from mid-level to slightly above average or whatever, which is how you build teams. You don't just build teams by having like one great star and a bunch of terrible guys who can't get any better. Everybody has to get better. That's what happened in 15-16. Every single person on that roster, top down, was better in game 82 than they were in game 1. And so having Kemba, having Charles Lee with the experiences that he can communicate so well from Milwaukee and Boston, all of that works together with like Brandon Miller coming to Summer League, setting precedent, setting examples, sharing stories. This is why we're excited. This is why we're saying that this season, even though I haven't played a game yet, feels so much different than even the 40 plus win season that we saw under Borrego. It's just something in the air smells a little bit different. It smells sweeter.
It does. You can smell now. AI can smell.
You'd be surprised how fast this technology is moving. Be scared of Sam Altman. I can smell. I can taste. I can feel.
You know what's weird? I actually and sometimes I will read the Wikipedia plots for movies I know I'm never going to make the time to watch. I just read the Bicentennial Man Wikipedia plot, and this is very reminiscent of that. Robin Williams, Doug Branson, both in one here.
Now, I will say I can taste, I can feel, I can smell. I forgot, Doug forgot to program listening to you into the Matrix. So I as this bot, Doug Bot-son, has not heard a single word. I cannot report anything back to Doug about what you said. I'm sorry.
All right. I'll tell the real Doug about what happened here today. That's Doug Bot-son. Find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. There you can find the real Doug's the real Doug subtext on everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow, or at least I will.
Beep boop.